Well, thank you for joining us for tonight's webinar, Charles in Charge, What's Next for the British Royal Family? I'm Greg Barry, Director in the Office of Alumni Affairs. Since we're virtual, please excuse technical issues or glitches that may pop up. If you experience issues with video or audio, refresh your screen or click the reconnect button to get back to the action right away. Also, the webinar is being recorded and will be uploaded onto our website tomorrow. Tonight, we are excited to welcome Rachel Birchfield to our webinar series. A writer for the UAB advancement team, Rachel earned her BS from Kansas in journalism and MA from Mississippi in higher education administration. Rachel is an internationally known royal expert, and you're going to get some big dirt today. She's written about the British royal family in many publications, and she co-hosts and I want to make sure I get this right, Podcast Royal, which is one of the leading royal podcasts in the world. The royal family has an incredible following and pulls a great deal of interest from around the globe. At this time, I would officially like to welcome Rachel and turn the program over to her. Welcome and thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Greg, as you say those words, I still can't believe that this is my life. I'm sitting in my bedroom. If you can't tell by my monogram above my headboard, I get the best service in my bedroom. So I'm sitting here in Birmingham, Alabama, making a career out of my wildest dreams. And so excited to chat with you all tonight. I'm assuming that many of you have at least a passing interest in the British royal family. Certainly never been a more interesting time to follow the family and cover the family. When I started doing this work in 2019, I had no idea what would be to come in 2020, 2021, 2022, and I'm sure on into 2023. But I want to begin tonight, before we get into it, by telling you that when Greg asked me to do this, we had no idea, and Greg didn't even have any idea until about 5 minutes ago, how fortuitous this ask, specifically this timing on December 6th, would be. So if I cough a little bit, it's because I caught a cold in Boston, and true royal followers will know what was happening in Boston last week. I was a part of the press pool in Boston with the Prince and Princess of Wales. I spent 3 days alongside William and Kate, side to side, covering their every move, everything from going to a Celtics game to going to different charitable organizations around the city. I spent one-on-one time for an hour and a half, which is unprecedented, with Kate at Harvard, and it was the experience of a lifetime, and we'll talk all about that, including I will share a couple of photos that I took on the ground. So they said don't take photos, but I took photos and they didn't kick me out, so that's good. Also, it's fortuitous timing because, again, if you're a royal follower, Harry and Meghan's docuseries, the first part, premieres on Thursday, which Greg also did not know when he asked me to come and speak a few weeks ago. We didn't know the release date. Also, here's some inside tea. Harry and Meghan recorded this docuseries before the Queen died. Harry also wrote his book, which will come out in January, before the Queen died. She passed away on September 8th. Having no idea that she was going to pass away, Harry and Meghan were very candid about Charles and Camilla, who, of course, at one point was Harry's mother's arch nemesis, his father's mistress throughout the 1980s and 1990s. And of course, William and Kate. I don't think Harry is going to say much bad about Kate. There's not much bad to say about her, but he was very candid, and she, for that matter, in the docuseries and in the book, about his father and his brother having no idea that when both projects came out, Charles would be on the throne. So Charles is in charge. We're going to talk tonight about what is next for the British royal family. He's been on the throne for almost 3 months. December 8th, which is on Thursday, will mark 3 months. We're going to get into a lot of different stuff. I encourage you, please, I'm not looking at the chat because it would distract me very much. Greg has told me that he is monitoring. We will have time for questions at the end, and I'm happy to answer anything you've got. And I I don't like the term royal expert. I prefer to be someone that interviews other royal experts, but I certainly know a little bit about this family and spend a lot of my time thinking about them. So let's get into it. So how on earth did I get myself into this work? A little girl from Kansas. I'm from Topeka, Kansas. As Greg said, I went to the University of Kansas, went down to the University of Mississippi. I've never heard it called just Mississippi, Greg, but Ole Miss for graduate school. So when I graduated from journalism school in 2009, if you remember what was going on in the climate of the world, that was the Great Recession. And all of my professors told me, go to graduate school, get a backup degree, get a backup career. So I did. So I went to Ole Miss, and I have a degree in higher education administration. So actually, again, to use the word fortuitously, a word I've used a whole lot this week, I truly think that because of the fact that I did have a 6-year career in higher education, I worked at Ole Miss, I worked at UAB, I worked at Belhaven University for about 5 seconds in Jackson, Mississippi, and then I came back to UAB later to work as a writer, which is what I do now. I work as a writer in the Office of Advancement. But because of my background in higher education, I truly believe that that is why I got the one-to-one access with Kate on Friday. And that's a total God thing. And I'm going to give God his propers and all of the credit. But how did I get myself into this work in the first place? So you can see the photo there is a photo, of course, of Princess Diana and her eldest son, Prince William. I grew up madly in love with Prince William. He was my first crush. He is 4 years older than me. I'm born in 1986. He in 1982. He was everything to me. I had every dream in the world that one day I would be the American princess. There is an American, well, she's technically a princess because she is married to a birth prince. We're talking about Meghan, of course. There is an American princess. It's not me, but I did just get to rub shoulders with William, which is still so unbelievable to say, last week. So William was my first crush, childhood crush. My mother had always had an interest in the royal family. She gets very angry at me when I say that her interest in the royal family began with Princess Diana. She says it goes back way farther than that. So she loved the Queen. The Queen took the throne in 1952. My mother was born in 1955. She tells me stories all the time of how she would play Queen with a robe and a towel over her head and make her little brother be her servant. And so she always loved the royal family. And so I was born into it. I can remember reading, my mom subscribed to every magazine under the sun. She used to have stacks and stacks and stacks. And somehow, by the grace of God, I've written for all of those magazines that I grew up reading, especially People magazine. People magazine in particular has fantastic royal family coverage. And I remember reading People magazine my entire childhood. Diana was on the cover all the time. And so the royals have always been a part of my life. As I said, I was born in 1986. Now the 1990s are coming back around again. Season 5 of The Crown just came out November 9th, which covers the 1990s. And I remember the 1990s the first time around. Charles and Camilla, all of the scandals, the Panorama interview, the Jonathan Dimbleby interview, of course, Diana's death in 1997. So I have always been interested in the royal family. And when I actually started doing the work in 2019, it was very easy, and it continues to be very easy. And the stories that I write have a lot of historical context because I really have been following this family since I can remember, my entire life. Let's just say, when do people start making memories? When they're 4, something like that. So since 1990, when I was 4, I have been immersed in this family. So flash forward to May 6th, 2019. That was the day that Prince Harry and Meghan Markle, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, who are pictured here, they had their first child, Archie Harrison Mountbatten Windsor. So I had some opinions about that name. I wasn't a big fan, and I put it on Facebook. And one of my actually former students at UAB commented and said, you know what? You have a lot of opinions about the royal family, which had to that point been just put in Facebook statuses. She said, you should make a blog or something. And I was like, I've never made a blog. I don't know how to do that. I do love to write, but maybe I should try. And so I did. So I created a blog called The Duchess Commentary. And the shtick of the Duchess commentary was, people, and again, I don't know how many of you are royal followers. I can't even see you. I'm just talking to myself here. I cannot see a single one of you. I hope there's people here. But I don't know how many of you follow the family, but there's a constant pitting against each other between Kate, who is now the Princess of Wales, but at that time was the Duchess of Cambridge, and Meghan, who is the Duchess of Sussex. You're either Team Kate or Team Meghan. Well, the Duchess commentary did not play by those rules. The Duchess commentary was very much pro both of them. You can go check it out. I haven't written in it since my, I think it was on my birthday, September 25th of 2020. So over 2 years. Things that I'll talk in a second. We've moved on from that. But it was a great entree point into writing about the royal family. And so the first post that I ever wrote was about my opinion of Archie's name, which I don't like. And so that Archie was born, and that marks kind of the beginning of my formal royal reporting career. Since then, I'm not going to go through all of these because I am, as I was just telling Mac and Greg offline before we started recording, I am very modest. I am very humble. I do not like to talk about this. I get very shy talking about myself. I am just a person. The cool people are the people that I interview. But I've written for all of these publications that you can see here, as well as these publications that you can see here. The Independent really got me. Does anybody watch Ted Lasso? And, they said Trent Krim, The Independent. So I actually can say Rachel Birchfield, The Independent. So back up to this. So focus on Marie Claire for a minute. So I actually work on the weekends. I work 7 days a week. And that someday has got to stop because I can't keep up this.
Rachel, if you can hear me, I think you just froze. And we'll hope to get Rachel back here in a moment, getting great energy and great information, even just in the introduction from her. So hopefully we can get her back here soon. Apologize for the error or the issue that we are having. And it's just one of those things, that happens and you never want to happen, but unfortunately that's what you get with technology. So I'm going to go ahead and shoot her a quick message and just tell her that we lost her, and it looks like she dumped out with her video, so she probably is aware of what's going on. And it was great to have just the timing of everything with Rachel. Rachel, if you can hear me, go ahead and X out, come back in, and we'll see if we can't get you back loaded. Again, to everybody in here, we apologize for this, and it's just doesn't happen often with this, but it does happen. Rachel, you're back.
Am I back?
You're back.
I don't know what happened.
I'm not sure. Go ahead and turn off your video. Sometimes that does work and allows for a less frozen experience. So you're back. You're on. I'm turning it back to you.
Great. Okay. Well, hey, Greg, before you go, what was the last thing you heard?
Oh, goodness. I panicked and I started trying to figure out how to get to you. You're talking about Mary Claire and working 7 days a week and not wanting to work 7 days a week.
There you go. Yes. Okay. So I work 7 days a week. I work Monday through Friday for UAB Advancement. Thank you, Barry, for saying that I'm worth the wait and using the word fortuitous. I got to get out of the chat because that's going to distract me forever. Okay. So on Saturdays and Sundays, 8 to noon, I work for Marie Claire. So, and Greg, I appreciate you pronouncing it the French way, Mary Claire, as it is intended, but we Americans bastardized the word down to Marie Claire. But so I started working for Marie Claire just in a freelance capacity in 2020, and then in about, I don't know, maybe a year ago or something like that, became the weekend editor at Marie Claire. And then was just promoted, which is kind of a false promotion because I get no more money and no more hours. But in September, after the Queen passed away, to Royals editor. So I'm officially Royals editor at Marie Claire, which is why the William and Kate trip was able to happen. There's no way I could have pulled that as Rachel Birchfield. That was all Marie Claire. So, and then I write for all these other publications that you can see. And then I don't know if you heard my little joke about the Independent, but I have written for the Independent, and that was really cool to be able to say Rachel Birchfield, the Independent. If anybody watches Ted Lasso, we do have a podcast. So I met my podcast co-host in, of all places, the Junior League of Birmingham. It was COVID. We were out to dinner. She said, we should start a podcast. And we said, well, what on earth will we podcast about? And then we said, well, we both like the royal family. And I said, okay, we can do that. And so Podcast Royal was born. Also, I should mention that my first real, so after starting the Duchess commentary, my first real national exposure to the royals writing scene was I'm the editor of What Meghan Wore. So Meghan, so this is funny. I become the editor of What Meghan Wore in September of 2020, and then Meghan is largely a hermit since then. So it was, the getting was good for a minute, and now she rarely makes appearances. But tonight, actually, right now, she is in New York City with Harry accepting an award at the Robert F. Kennedy Foundation, and I just saw what she's wearing. Now, don't leave me and go Google it. Check What Meghan Wore later, but she's wearing this. I don't know who the designer is yet because I haven't had time. I've been preparing for this, but gorgeous off-the-shoulder white look. I really love writing about clothes, writing about Kate's clothes, Meghan's clothes. But anyway, enough about me. So that's my career. That's how we got here. I have had the chance to interview everyone from Andrew Morton, who is on the left there. He, of course, wrote the groundbreaking 1992 book, Diana, Her True Story, which when it came out in 1992 was considered a biography. But after she died in 1997, it was found out that it was really more of an autobiography. And if you've watched season 5 of The Crown, episode 2, Andrew Morton features heavily in that. I won't spoil it in case you haven't. I've also had the opportunity to interview Sarah Ferguson, Duchess of York, which I thought was going to be my mountaintop moment with the royals until this past week. So I took that picture of Kate. That is how close I was to her. That is taken on my cell phone. And she is just as lovely in person as you would hope she would be. She is 5'9", flat-footed. She usually wears about 3 to 4 inch heels, so she is tall. William is 6'3". I think she likes to go toe-to-toe, head-to-head, eye-to-eye with him. So she is roughly about 6'2", 6'3" in heels. And that dress that she's wearing is a houndstooth for, we are in Alabama. I know we're at UAB, but houndstooth, blue houndstooth Amelia Wickstead dress. And she is talking in this photo. So we're at Harvard in this picture. We're in a very small conference room in Harvard, and there are 6 people around the table. You can't see them, but they're all working with, so one of Kate's passion projects is early childhood development. So she is talking in that photo with 5 other people at the Harvard Center on the Developing Child, I think is what it's called. And so I am standing off to the side. I'm the only print reporter in the room. So I'm not going to stay here too long because we are going to talk about Charles a lot. But I have to include this because this just happened. This was last Friday, not even a week ago. It was just a couple days ago. And so the way that royal tours work, here's a little behind the scenes information, is that on this particular tour, there were 8 events. There were 2 on Wednesday, 3 on Thursday, and 3 on Friday. And so for most of these events, they have what's called a fixed point. So that means that anybody from the press pool, there's about 30, 35 of us in the press pool. Any of us in the press pool can go to events with a fixed point. Well, the event at Harvard, as you can see, this is a very small conference room. I guess you can't really see that, but it is a small conference room. And there's no way that the entire press pool would have fit in there. Hold on a second. I caught a cold in Boston. My best friend is on this webinar. She will laugh when I say this. I didn't bring a coat to Boston. I didn't have room in my suitcase. I caught a cold. So hold on a second. I'm surprised that's the first time that I coughed. My best friend is out there laughing somewhere because I do lack common sense a little bit. But anyway, you can see that the room is small, so we couldn't have had 35 people in the room. So the only people that were allowed in were 1 print journalist. That was me. I think there were 2 photographers in there and 1 camera crew. And so I was the only print journalist with her for an hour and a half, which again, the reason why I got that assignment, I truly believe, hand to God, is because of my 6-year career in higher education. So let this be a lesson that there are no mistakes in life. You never know what your quote unquote delay could do to help you in the future. On the right, so Charles, it's hard to read this from where I'm looking, but on the top signature is Charles. And so Harvard has a guest book. As you can see, it's very big. There's multiple volumes of it. He visited Harvard for Harvard's 350th anniversary on September 4th, 1986, which coincidentally was 3 weeks to the day before I was born. So then you can see Catherine's signature. She goes by Catherine. And by the way, I forgot to mention that my middle name is Elizabeth, and so is Kate's, so is Catherine's. And my middle name is after the Queen. That's how much my mom loves the royal family. So, but there's Catherine's signature from December 2nd, 2022, which was last Friday. So that's a great segue into Charles. So, but before we go there, my interest in the British royal family, which goes back centuries and centuries, begins in 1936. What happened in 1936, you ask? Well, and who is this woman on the left, you ask? That is Wallis Simpson. Wallis Simpson was a twice divorced American woman who the then king, Edward VIII, fell in love with. He fell in love with her so hard that he abdicated the throne after less than a year. They didn't even have time to have his coronation, and he married her. He left his position as king to marry Wallis Simpson. So that is where I pick up. But I really pick up in 1981 when a young woman just turned 20, just a couple weeks prior, married the then Prince of Wales and future king, who we're about to talk about in depth, Charles, on July 29th, 1981. I hate that dress, y'all. And my mom gets so mad at me when I say that, but I can't stand anything about that dress. And I'm about to tell you in a minute some insider info about the wedding. But that is really, I think that day, July 29th, 1981, is the beginning of the modern day royal family. So we're here to talk about Charles, and we haven't talked about him for 1 second, and it's been 24 minutes. So Charles, a man that was born to be king and relegated to what I call the longest apprenticeship of all time. Can you imagine apprenticing for a job for 73, nearly 74 years? So Prince Charles Philip Arthur George was born in 1948. His mother became queen when he was 3 years old, and he became Prince of Wales in 1958. He's the longest person to ever have that title, though his investiture was not until he was 20 years old in 1969. Fun fact about that investiture, hold on a second. Got to keep drinking the water so I don't cough in your face. If you look back at photos of the investiture, the crown that he is wearing, atop that crown is what looks like an orb. That is actually a ping pong ball that is spray painted gold. So there's the British royal family for you in all its pomp and ceremony. So I just read a great book. I need to plug it. I interview this guy all the time. He's a royal expert. He is a royal expert. I don't consider myself a royal expert. I just interview royal experts. Christopher Anderson, he has written like a bazillion books. I think he's written 37 books. Not all of them are about the British royal family, but a lot of them are. He wrote a book that just came out. We just interviewed him on the podcast, and the book is called The King. And Christopher Anderson describes Charles as the loneliest human being on earth. Charles never felt like he belonged. He was born to a woman who of course, I revere the Queen, but the Queen is a very emotionally distant person. She is not the type of mother who is going to shower her son with hugs and kisses. In fact, she was rarely ever there because she became queen when he was so young. Water break. Then his father, Prince Philip, is just about the most alpha male that has ever lived. And Charles is very sensitive. Charles is a romantic. He loves environmentalism, which so did Philip, by the way, but Charles loves the arts. He's just a more sensitive creature. And so he never felt like he fit in with his parents. Imagine being the future king, the Prince of Wales, and how ostracizing that would be from your peers. He goes to a school called, hold on, just a minute, I feared this might happen. I've been saving my voice for 2 days so this wouldn't happen. He went to a school called Gordonston, which he was taunted mercilessly at this school. He really has never fit in his entire life. And in fact, I think one of the only people that really truly understands him is Camilla. We'll get into her in a little bit. Charles has a volatile temper. He has been known to rip a sink off the wall. He throws things. You even got a glimpse of his temper when he became king. If any of you remember that video of him he's signing something and the pen doesn't work and he gets very agitated and frustrated. And I love seeing people like get all in their craw and get all snippy, and he completely freaks out, and he knows that the cameras are rolling. So imagine what he's like when the cameras are not rolling. I apologize, y'all. Hold on. Thankfully, you don't have to see me cough. You just have to hear me. Excuse me. He also has an Eeyore complex. He is a pessimist. He's a downer. And that he has always said of himself that he does not think that he will be good at the job. He just doesn't have a very high opinion of himself. So at 73, nearly 74, his birthday is November 14th, he became the oldest person to ever ascend to the British throne on September 8th, 2022. So that woman is Camilla Shand. She was then Camilla Shand. That is her maiden name. This is what Camilla looked like when Charles met her in the early 1970s. Pause. That's so frustrating. Hold on. Should have worn my coat in Boston. So that is what Camilla looked like. I think she is beautiful there. Not that it matters what I think, but they met in the early 1970s. Camilla's opening line to Charles, and this is true, was that her grandmother had shagged. I won't explain what that is. I think I can't now. I'm blanking. One of the members of Charles's family. So she said, "How about it?" Meaning the two of them. He loved that. I mean, can you imagine his mother, the queen, or anybody in his family saying anything like that? She's very funny. She is very boisterous. She lights up a room, apparently, when she walks into it, and they fell completely in love. Well, Camilla was not, to put it mildly, if that didn't give it away, not really the type of woman that you brought home to mom, especially if your mom was the Queen of England. And so there was going to be no way that Camilla, who, this is such an archaic thing about the British royal family in the 70s and 80s, but the future wife of Charles had to be a virgin, which is very offensive, and we would never be able to have this conversation in 2022, thankfully. But this was a different time. Camilla was not a virgin. We'll just put it that way. And so this marriage was never going to happen. But they were soulmates. Even then, they fell completely in love. Charles goes off in the Royal Navy. While he's gone, Camilla marries this other guy that she had been dating named Andrew Parker Bowles. So in the weirdness and the small circles that is aristocratic society in Britain then and now, there was a weird like love square, not love triangle, between Princess Anne, who is Charles's sister, Andrew Parker Bowles, Charles, and Camilla. So Andrew Parker Bowles was dating Anne and Camilla. Charles was dating Camilla. Camilla was dating Charles, and Andrew is messy. And so while Charles was away at the Navy, Camilla, who I think probably knew that she would never be queen, which is funny because she now is, she married Andrew Parker Bowles because she liked him too. And Charles found out about this while he was in the Navy, and it devastated him. It absolutely gutted him. He wrote to his mentor, Lord Mountbatten, that I suppose this feeling of emptiness will pass someday. But he never fell out of love with her. So he goes on, and they are always friends. So he goes on in the late 1970s to meet this young woman who is Lady Diana Spencer. Technically, Lady Diana Spencer is more blue-blooded aristocratically than even Charles is. So her father is an earl, and that earldom has now passed to her brother. So Earl Charles Spencer, her brother, is an earl. Funny enough, speaking of everybody dating everybody, at one point Charles dated Diana's older sister, Sarah, but she messed up, Sarah did, because she went and talked to the press about him. So he cut her off. But Diana is significantly younger than her two older sisters. So Diana was kind of just the little girl that was cute, but she was always kind of running around in the background. Diana is 12 years younger, 12 and a half years younger than Charles. So she wasn't ever really seen as a possibility. Well, by this time in 1979, 1980, Diana's grown up. She's 18-ish, 18, 19 years old now. She's beautiful. You can see her in that picture. That's from roughly around this time. So in 1979, Charles's mentor, Lord Mountbatten, who I just mentioned, he was assassinated by the IRA. This was absolutely devastating for Charles. It, again, gutted him. And Diana, when she ran into Charles, won him over by saying, totally different than what Camilla said to win him over, won him over by saying, "You just look so sad." And he was, because he had just lost the man who he really considered more of a father figure than his own father, who he was very distant from. And so Charles and Diana start dating. She is now seen as a prospect. She is a virgin. Again, gross, but she's 18, 19 years old around this time. And by now we are in 1980. So by the time that Charles proposed in February of 1981, Charles and Diana had only interacted about 13 times before they were married. Can you imagine that? That just seems insane to think that this marriage was ever in any way set up to work. They barely knew each other. They were 12 and a half years apart. By this time, Charles is 32 years old. He feels pressure to propose. Of course, he feels pressure to carry out the duty of fathering an heir to the throne, which will become William. So they get engaged in February of 1981. He proposes over the phone. He is away, and Diana is young. Diana is 19. Now, I remember myself at 19, and heck, I still am kind of this way at 36. I'm in love with the idea of love. And Diana was as well, a total romantic. She's in love with the idea of marrying the Prince of Wales, and vis-a-vis is in love with Charles, but she doesn't really know Charles. She is in love with the idea of Charles. She reads romance novels. Her stepmother is actually a romance novelist, and she is basically a schoolgirl. And so at their engagement interview, Charles says about the worst thing that a fiance could ever say when someone asks him on camera, "Are you in love?" Diana's response, "But of course." Charles's response, "Whatever in love means." Now, that's about the time. Now, I'm a sucker for love and a romantic, but that's about the time that I would look at him and go, are we really right for each other? Should we really do this? But that didn't happen. So Camilla Parker Bowles, by now she's Camilla Parker Bowles. She's been married for a few years. She is present at their wedding on July 29th, 1981. The night before the wedding, Charles told Diana he did not love her. He said it. He said, "I can't walk down the aisle and not tell you this. I'm not in love with you." And Diana was in love with the idea of love. She goes to her sisters. She says, "What should I do? I don't know if we should do this. I don't think this is right." This is essentially an arranged marriage at this point. Her sisters are Sarah, who's Charles's ex, and Jane. They tell her, "Too late, Dutch." Her childhood nickname, Diana's childhood nickname was Duchess. "Too late, Dutch. Your face is on the tea towels," because, of course, all of the memorabilia had already been printed. Tea towels, plates, cups, everything you could think of. It was too late. The toothpaste was out of the tube. Diana had lost so much weight in the lead up to this wedding because Charles at one point had called her chubby, which is, again, why are you marrying this man? But she was so nervous, and she also had some eating disorders as well. She was so nervous at the wedding that on the day of the wedding, she spilled almost an entire bottle of perfume on her dress. So now when you go back and watch YouTube of the royal wedding, you can see that Diana is awkwardly holding her bouquet all day long because there is a massive perfume stain on her dress. Also, can you imagine how much she smelled going down the aisle, like how strong she smelled going down the aisle? She spilled almost an entire bottle of very expensive, very pungent perfume all over herself. But they get married, and I don't actually like watching Charles and Diana's wedding because to me it looks like a lamb being led to the slaughter, and we all know how the story ends. Diana, again, so nervous, she bungles Charles's name at the altar. She switches around. I think she actually called him Philip Charles instead of Charles Philip, and both were so nervous, obviously not marrying the right person. Charles, the right person for you, sitting in St. Paul's Cathedral where they got married, watching this happen. It's just all so twisted, and you could not, that's why the royal family is so fascinating. You could not make this up if you tried. This is so much more interesting than any fiction. So they forgot to kiss at the altar. They were supposed to kiss at the altar. They forgot. So how did the Buckingham Palace kissing tradition start? Because they go, we never kissed at the altar. We should probably do that. So they made up for it on the Buckingham Palace balcony. They started that tradition that has been continued by William and Kate, Fergie and Andrew. Harry and Meghan didn't get married or didn't do it at Buckingham Palace, but they did it at St. George's at Windsor. So there's some fun facts for you about the royal wedding. So then we have the 80s. So the 80s, Charles claims that he was faithful in his marriage for the first few years until, as he said on Jonathan Dimbleby, the marriage irretrievably broken down. They had irretrievably broken down. So you can see Diana is holding William, who was born in 1982. Charles is holding Harry, who was born in 1984. To answer the question that's on many of your minds, James Hewitt is not Harry's father. If you look at pictures of Harry and old pictures of Prince Philip, they look almost identical. And Diana didn't meet James Hewitt until 1986 anyway, so that would have been impossible. And the red hair is from the Spencer side of the family, Diana's side. So yes, everything I've ever been told is that Harry really is Charles's biological son. So the marriage is, after William, it's the happiest point of their marriage. They go off to Australia. Again, this is chronicled in The Crown. Charles very much wanted the second child to be a girl, which obviously Harry is not. That's not the reason the marriage broke down, but after Harry was born, the marriage starts to break down, and Harry's born in 1984. He starts seeing Camilla again. Diana has numerous affairs of her own, and basically the marriage is a total sham. It is, they look relatively happy for the press, but behind closed doors, they're both, Charles is in love with someone else. Diana wasn't with any of the 1980s affairs people, but to the public eye, everybody thinks the marriage is fine. Then comes the 1990s. So Camilla has always been in the picture, period, either as a friend or as more than that. But in the early 1990s, Charles begins to say, I can't do this anymore. I'm not happy in this marriage. And that is Camilla, Camilla Shand from before. This is her in the 1990s now on the left. And so the affair starts to become public. It becomes part of tabloid fodder. It's in the press. The marriage is breaking down. So in 1992, that's the Queen's Annus Horribilis. So the Queen has 4 children. In 1992, 3 of them were married. Prince Edward didn't get married until 1999. All 3 of her children's marriages, Charles and Diana, Fergie and Andrew, Anne and her first husband, Mark Phillips, they all get divorces. Plus, Windsor Castle catches on fire. It's a bad year. So Diana and Charles eventually divorce in 1996. They were separated for about 3.5 years. The divorce papers are signed, sealed, and delivered on August 28th, 1996. 368 days later, that accident in the photo on the right happens. August 31st, 1997. Over the summer, I actually got the chance to go to Paris. I actually got the chance to, in a very eerie moment, recreate Diana's final ride from the front or from the back door of the Ritz in Paris to the Alma Tunnel. The Alma Tunnel is so compact. You don't know really what these places look like until you are there. The Alma Tunnel is so compact. It's so it's not tall. It's very claustrophobic in there. And so Diana's in the car with Dodi Fayed, who she spent the summer of 1997 with. Her bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones, is in the front passenger seat, and the driver is Henri Paul, who is head of security at the Ritz. Dodi Al-Fayed's father, Mohammed, owned the Ritz. Henri Paul is drunk. They are also being chased mercilessly by the paparazzi. They run into the 13th pillar. That's a Mercedes, if you'll believe it, and it smashes. 3 of the 4 people in the car die. Trevor Rees-Jones survives. He's terribly injured. He remembers nothing of the accident. Now, Dodi and Henri Paul die immediately. Diana did not die immediately. Originally, it was thought that Diana was okay. She talked a little bit. She was very discombobulated, but originally they thought she was okay. Turned out that she had an internal injury. Her heart, she was not wearing a seatbelt. Her heart literally ripped from one side of her body and back to the other. And she died at 4 o'clock in the morning on August 31st, 1997. And I maintain that, so when Charles and Diana divorced in 1996, she was stripped of her HRH title, her Royal Highness title. I maintain that if Diana had still had that HRH title and the security that went along with it, the royal security that went along with it, she never would have been in a car with a drunk driver, Henri Paul, and she would still be alive today. And you can take that and quote me on that forever. I truly believe that the stripping of the HRH title is ultimately what led to that tragic night in Paris. So everything changes. It is thought for no rhyme or reason that Charles and Camilla will ever get to be together now. But he says, my relationship with Camilla is an absolute non-negotiable. I will not do this job without her. So slowly, they begin to introduce Camilla to William and Harry, introduce them as a couple in the to see them attending events. Then in 2005, they were married. That's the photo from their wedding day. They've been married for 17 years. And, oops, did I do that? Oh, I'm not clicking that.
Yeah, sorry, that's me, and I'm seeing a big blank hole. So I apologize for that. I was trying to get to the right picture, the one you're talking about. There's nothing there.
Really? I'm looking at it. That's weird. Well, anyway, it's a picture of Charles. Maybe that's, I can make a joke here. Maybe that's Diana saying, I don't want you to see Charles and Camilla's wedding day. Anyway, so I don't know if you can see the picture on the right side, but that is a picture of William and Kate on their wedding day in 2011 and Harry and Meghan on their wedding day in 2018. So William and Kate met as college students at the University of St. Andrews. They were college sweethearts. And in a total show of how far the monarchy has come from Diana having to be a virgin in the early 1980s, William and Kate actually lived together as college students. Now, they said that they were platonic roommates, but okay, they were not. They were definitely dating. They had 2 other roommates, but they definitely lived together. And the 2000s are pretty nondescript, but it is the courtship of William and Kate. They dated for 8 years before he proposed in 2010 in Kenya. He proposed with Diana's iconic sapphire engagement ring. And then this is the future of the monarchy and the royal wedding in 2011. I don't have to, please watch all of these royal weddings. They're all on YouTube. But then in the, save for the royal wedding, so then they start having children. They have 3 children, 2013, 2015, 2018. Things are pretty good. Really, if you had asked any royal expert in like 2017, the queen was going to go out on a note. She'd done everything she needed to do. She, at the time, was, what would she have been, 90, 91? Everything was pretty perfect. Harry had finally fallen in love. He'd had 2 high-profile, serious relationships. Neither of those women, Chelsea Davy or Cressida Bonus, could handle the press, and so they broke up with him. But then he meets this actress. She does red carpets, everybody. She's on TV. She's used to this world. She's okay with it. Her name's Meghan Markle. She's on this TV show called Suits. It's about a law firm. And they fall in love. They fall in love fast and furious. Their third date is to Botswana. Like, who goes to Botswana on their third date? And they spend 5 days there under the stars, where they apparently make this pact to each other that it's us against the world. And then they get married in 2018. They hadn't even known each other for 2 years yet. Compare and contrast that with William and Kate, who, when they got married in 2011, had known each other for 10 years. And so you can see William kind of thinking, maybe my brother's moving a little bit too quickly. Well, then I enter the royal reporting world in 2019. Again, everything seems okay. There's some rumors of tension between Kate and Meghan. Why do they always pit the women against each other when it was really the brothers that were at war? And so, but in 2019, everything seems okay. I mean, maybe a little discord, but what family doesn't have that? And then we have the 2020s. Greg, can you see this picture? Can we see these pictures?
Yes, we can.
I'm telling you, Diana said, I'm not having the people on this webinar at the University of Alabama at Birmingham see that wedding picture of Charles and Camilla. You can Google it if you want to. But then we have the 2020s. So 2020 is a turbulent year for us all, right? But I remember exactly where I was. I was in my car. I had gone to Walgreens. I was leaving the next day to go on vacation to Costa Rica. I was in Walgreens buying travel size shampoo. I walked out to my car and my phone has blown up. And it's January 8th, 2020. Again, I fly out the next day to go out of the country. And Harry and Meghan have quit the royal family. They have stepped back as members of the royal family, as working members of the royal family. This kicks off the turbulent 2020s. So for the rest of the year, so eventually Harry and Meghan moved to Canada. They eventually end up in LA, which is Meghan's hometown. And then in March of 2021, they appear on Oprah. If you haven't seen that, I can't believe it, but they appeared on Oprah. It's kind of like the primer to what's about to happen this week with the docuseries. And they say some very damaging allegations against the family. And then that April, the next month, within weeks, I think it was about a month later, Prince Philip dies. Prince Philip is the Queen's husband of 73 years. This is one of their last pictures taken together. It's actually a beautiful photo. It's a recreation of an earlier photo of them when they're teenagers and in their early 20s. He was her strength and stay, and those are her words. And so I knew when Philip died that the Queen would probably not be long for this world. In fact, she lasted quite a bit longer, honestly, than I thought she would. And the reason for that is I truly believe she wanted to see her Platinum Jubilee happen. So over the summer, she ascended to the throne on February 6th, but celebrated her Platinum Jubilee to coincide with her coronation anniversary in June. And so it was a big pageant. No way you missed it. If you follow the royals. And then on September 8th, she passed away. We've come to find out later that she had cancer, and that this woman is a rock. She is one of the toughest. They don't make them like her anymore. She was in so much physical pain. They wrote it off as a back injury. That she was having back mobility issues is what they called it. And so she missed a lot of events in last year, but that's okay. She's 95, 96 years old in the last year of her life. And so the Platinum Jubilee happens on September 6th, which was a Tuesday. She appoints a new prime minister, Liz Truss, who is not even prime minister anymore. That's how quickly that happened. But 2 days later, she passes away at her beloved Balmoral Castle in Scotland at 96 years old. So September 8th, I woke up on September 8th which was a Thursday, to a text from my editor, Marie Claire, saying, hey, we're getting word that the Queen is sick. It's probably going to happen over the weekend, because when the monarch is 96 years old, you're kind of always wondering when it's going to happen. And so I said, okay, I'll prepare myself for the weekend. I already worked the weekend shift at Marie Claire, so that's fine. Then I start getting texts from my sources, from people in London that, no, this is going to happen today. It's really bad, and you need to prepare yourself for this. I'm sitting actually on the 12th floor of the administration building, which is where my cubicle is at UAB, and I start crying when the news breaks that she has died. And it to me was like losing a third grandmother. So Charles happens to be, again, fortuitously in Scotland when his mother's health really takes a turn for the worse. So when you learn about Buckingham Palace and how they communicate, when they said that she was in grave health, they would never say something like that, usually unless she's probably already dead. What you hear from Buckingham Palace is usually about 2 or 3 steps behind from where it actually is. So the fact that they said something that candid, that's when we all said, this is not good. Nobody expected September 8th to be the day. So the night before, Charles had dined with Jenna Bush Hager from the Today Show, NBC. Camilla had an interview with her the next morning. And in fact, they were getting ready to start taping when Camilla got the news and rushed off. So his mother's health, the Queen's health, declined so rapidly that only Charles and Princess Anne, who were both in Scotland at the time, were able to make it to her bedside before she died that afternoon around 3:30 or so in the afternoon Scotland time, which would have made it 9:30 or so our time. The moment that she took her last breath, King Charles III was born. I have always found it incredibly cruel that the moment that Charles, in this case, has waited 73 and a half years for hinges on the death of his mother, of his beloved mother. They, in the last years of her life, had gotten closer than they had ever been. And the work that he had been preparing his entire life to do began the moment that she took her last breath. So we are 3 months into Charles's reign. The first task was to get the family through the 11 days leading up to the funeral, which I can't imagine how they did it. They were hopping around from Scotland to Wales to Northern Ireland to the UK, all of the processions. I was just reporting on the ground, and I was exhausted. I actually ended up on CNN and a couple other news programs reporting on the Queen. It was kind of like this. I couldn't see anybody I was talking to. It was really weird. I was staring into a black box. I got up at 3 o'clock to get my hair and makeup done. It was a very weird and strange experience. And if you listen to the episode, the special episode on Podcast Royal, I start breaking down crying because, again, this was a very personal loss for me. And some people out there are like, that's wild, you've never met her. But again, I followed this family my entire life. So his first task was to get through the 11 days leading up to the funeral, which was on September 19th. Finally, by the time we were at the funeral, it felt like we had been doing this forever. Then there was a 7-day mourning period, which was done in private after that. So finally, the mourning period ended September 26th, which was actually the day after my birthday. So I have been shocked that how well received Charles has been by the public. And he has already undertaken many firsts in his first 3 months. He's had his first state visit. South Africa's president came to town a couple of weeks ago. He's had his first Remembrance Sunday, and he's soon to be hosting his very first Sandringham Christmas. So just last week, scandal rocked the palace. One of Camilla's ladies in waiting, I think she's calling them her companions, which whatever, it's still 6 and 1/2 dozen to the other. So this woman, Susan Hussey, who, what a name, right? Susan Hussey is William's godmother and has been around the palace. She's 83 years old. She's been around the palace forever. She said some really offensive racist comments at an event that Camilla was hosting for domestic violence survivors. And so that happened. The news of that broke on Wednesday of last week, which was the first day of William and Kate's tour. Then the second day of William and Kate's tour on Thursday, the trailer or the teaser, whatever you want to call it, for Harry and Meghan's docuseries came out. So last week was a very roller coaster week, and little of it was focused on the work that they were there to do, but it ended well. We thought the fallout from season 5 of Netflix's The Crown would be the worst part of the fall for Charles. It turns out that was nothing. They were actually quite kind to him, if you ask me. The fallout from that seems to be rather minimal. Of course, there is still more to come. from none other than inside the family. So I still maintain, I try to like these people, y'all. I really do. I really try to give Harry and Meghan a chance. The Oprah interview really put me off. I have issues with my own family. Not that anybody cares enough to put me on Oprah, but even if they did, I would not run to Oprah with my problem. I'd probably run to my local therapist and try to work it out that way with my family. But Harry and Meghan are the term revenge projects is not my term. Rebecca English, who is another reporter, she writes for the Daily Mail. That's her term. So I kind of love that because that's what they are. So nobody knows what's in the docuseries except from what we've seen in the teaser and in the trailer. The first 3 parts drops Thursday. The second 3 parts drops December 15th. December 8th, which is Thursday, is the 3-month anniversary of the Queen's death. Not great timing. December 15th, when the final 3 parts drop, is the same night as Kate's Christmas Carol concert. Again, not great timing. Same with the teaser dropping when William and Kate were in Boston. Either this is all coincidental, which at this point I cannot believe, or this is really, really rude, honestly. Nobody knows what's in the docuseries other than what we've seen in the trailer. But as what we've seen in the trailer, it stands to be pretty explosive. Then on the right, that's Harry. I hate this cover of this book. I think Harry, my podcast co-host said that Harry looks like he's in a sci-fi movie in this book cover, and I agree. I think Harry is a very handsome man. This is a weird picture, but that is the cover of Harry's book, Spare, and that comes out January 10th. And so none of us, I've been trying to get screeners for the docuseries, can't get it. Iron wall around it. Trying to get advanced reader copies for Spare. Nobody's budging. It is all airtight. By the way, the Netflix deal with the Sussexes was worth $150 million. The project itself cost 88 million pounds. The book deal, which in his defense, most of it is going to charity, was a $20 million book deal with Penguin Random House. So if people are paying that kind of money, they're not going to let you get away with surface level BS. So again, these projects were completed and wrapped and in the can before the Queen died. I think he's going to be pretty candid about his father, who he didn't realize would be king at the time, and his brother. And Camilla is probably going to get the lion's share of the criticism, because keep in mind, he's still Diana's son. And I'm glossing over the speed of light. We could talk for hours about this, and I am going to go over time because I did get kicked off. So if you guys have to go, but I wish you'd stay because we're getting to the end and I want to take your questions. So these are going to be really damaging, or they won't. I don't know. I mean, I said season 5 of The Crown would be damaging, and it wasn't. So we'll see what happens. I have no idea what's in these projects because they have kept them completely under lock and key. So Charles has never been closer to William. Charles has had a distant relationship, to be honest with you, with William and Harry throughout their lives. The boys very much tended to side with Anna while she was alive. William and Diana were weirdly close, almost too close. Diana saw him as a confidant rather than a son, and it was a little bit over the line. But William and Charles are extremely close now. This photo is from the night before the Queen's funeral, so it would have been September 18th. By the way, Kate is that beautiful in person. I'm just saying, she is perfection. But it's notable because Harry and Meghan were in the country. They happened to be in the country when the Queen died. They live in the U.S. now, in case you missed that somehow in the headlines. But they happened to be on a little mini tour of the UK. And so they were in country when she died, and they're still in country that night. And that picture that you're looking at was taken at a reception at Buckingham Palace, which Harry and Meghan were invited to and then uninvited to. So there's a lot of people, there's a lot of cooks in this kitchen, and I've said this for years about the royal media office, the royal press office. I don't often understand their rationale. But anyway, William and Kate, they're close too. But William and Charles are incredibly close right now. William is the new Prince of Wales. So Charles was Prince of Wales for the longest of anybody in history. William is Prince of Wales now, and he is planning his father's coronation, which is on May 6th. So, look, no matter where you are in life right now, let Camilla Parker Bowles, or whatever you want to call her, I am a Diana aficionado, and I still struggle with Charles and Camilla being married. I definitely struggle with Camilla being queen. So if you'll notice in my writings, until somebody tells me to stop, I'm still calling her Queen Consort Camilla, even though some outlets are calling her Queen Camilla. Can't do it yet until somebody tells me you have to. So if you watch season 5 of The Crown, towards the end of the season, you see Camilla, she's going to a spin doctor. She's going to a public relations person to try to rehabilitate her image, because Charles has said Camilla's a non-negotiable. I'm not doing it without her. So that was called, I don't think they say this in the show, but that was called Operation PB, which stands for Parker Bowles. So that operation was to rehabilitate Camilla's image and basically make her somewhat acceptable to the public. Now, in the 1990s, when the divorce was happening, Camilla, by the way, also obviously got a divorce from Andrew Parker Bowles before Charles did. I think she got divorced in 1992 or 3. She would go to the grocery store. People would throw bread at her. They would throw tomatoes at her. I mean, if any of you were around in the 1990s, which I assume some of you were, she was one of the most vilified women in the world. And to go from there to being able to marry Charles to now being called Queen Camilla, could any of you that were following the royals in, let's say, 1995 have imagined that this woman would have a crown on her head? Look at that woman with the crown on her head right there. So she is, she's queen. She will be queen. She will be crowned alongside her husband, side by side, on May 6th. So wherever you're at in life right now, let me tell you, anything is possible. Let her be proof. No one has prepared for a job longer than Charles has. The future is secure. William is the next in line, and then that is his son, George, who is 9 years old, and he is next in line after that. But it's never that simple, right? So Charles's first 3 months has been better than expected. It has been relatively drama-free, I would say, up until the Susan Hussey incident last week. Other than Harry and Meghan, but you never really know what Harry and Meghan will do. They're a bit of a loose cannon. Okay, I'm going to go really granular here for a second. So it might get worse if Charles denies Archie and Lily titles. Let me explain. Okay, this is going to lose some of you, but we're doing it anyway. So all grandchildren of the monarch are entitled to prince and princess titles. So when Archie and Lily, who are Harry and Meghan's children, when they were born, they were the great-grandchildren of the monarch. So they did not get prince and princess titles. They got master and miss titles. So then you ask, why did William's children get prince and princess titles? Prince George, Princess Charlotte, Prince Louis. Well, the Queen made an amendment to that rule that said that any children of an heir, which William is, would get prince and princess titles upon their birth. So that is why William's children were born with prince and princess titles, and Archie and Lily were not. Well, now, right, Archie and Lily's grandfather is king, so they should be prince and princess, right? Well, not so fast. Charles is blocking that from happening because he's waiting to see what happens in this docuseries and in this book. And if it's as bad as I think it's going to be, I don't think that Archie and Lily are going to get the titles. Now, who really cares about the titles, right? These kids live in California. They don't even live in the UK. Well, it's a matter of security. So as I said before, when you have an HRH title, when you have that title, you are entitled to security that you're not entitled to if you don't have it. And that is why Harry and Meghan are pushing so hard for these titles. I don't think it's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. It should have happened on September 8th. Automatically, but it didn't. So that tells you everything. Add to the mix that we've got Prince Andrew, who is Charles's younger brother, who is enmeshed in a sexual assault. Well, the case is closed now. They settled out of court, but he's associated with Jeffrey Epstein. It's a mess. Charles has said forever that he wants to have a slimmed down monarchy, which could cost Prince Edward, his youngest brother, a long promised role, the Duke of Edinburgh title. We don't have time to get into that. But again, it's causing more rifts. The relevancy of the monarchy is constantly under scrutiny. The UK is in a cost of living crisis right now, rising costs, and people are asking the question, and it's not an unfair question, is the monarchy relevant anymore? Do we need a king? The Queen, everybody adored her. They were going to see her through the end of her reign. Well, she is gone now. Do we still need this? And this is from the book The King that I mentioned earlier by Christopher Anderson, which I'm making no money by plugging this book. It's just a good book. But he asked this question in The King. And when I read this on the page, my heart sank, because the ultimate question that plagues Charles and has his entire life and will for the rest of his life is, will they love me like they loved her? Will they love me like they loved his mother, the beloved queen of 70 years who never put a foot wrong, really? And then, will they love me like they loved Diana? Throughout the entirety of his marriage, Charles was the second-class citizen. The future king was relegated to being the supporting cast to Diana's star. And he has always felt lonely and isolated and out of place, like he never fit in. And he has always felt like he could never live up, and he can't. He can't. Even on his best day, he is but a shadow of both of these women. Will they love me like they loved her? And that remains to be seen. Okay, I wanted to have so much more time to go into this because I think this is completely fascinating. But in the interest of your time, I'm going to do a high-level overview of this. So I thought that this would have happened already. So I still think that there will be geopolitical ramifications of the Queen's death. That's a really fancy, like, I sound really smart saying that. But what I mean by that is, so the British royal family is in the UK, yes, but there's also the Commonwealth, which is made up of 53 nations across the world that also consider the Queen their queen. Of those 53 nations, 16 of them are called sovereign states. So I have actually been to the Bahamas. If you ever go to the Bahamas, you will, well, now it's going to be Charles, but before she died, you would have seen the Queen's face on the money. You would have seen her face plastered up everywhere because she is their queen too, right? So William and Kate, why this Boston trip last week was incredibly interesting, even more than it would have been anyway, is because it was their first royal tour since their Caribbean royal tour in March, which was a complete disaster. So they visited the Bahamas, which is the blue and yellow and black flag. They visited Belize, which is the flag in the middle, and then they visited Jamaica. The tour was so bad that at the end of the tour, all three of those, Bahamas, Belize, Jamaica, are sovereign states. At the end of that tour, all three of them, 3 for 3, said, we don't want to be sovereign states anymore. We don't want the Queen as our monarch. We're pulling out. We're becoming a republic. Barbados became a republic in November of 2021. The last time that happened was 1992. So November 2021, Barbados pulls out. March 2022, Bahamas, Belize, Jamaica all pull out because of this 8-day tour that went so disastrously wrong. Australia, which is the flag below that, also has said, we don't want to do this anymore. I thought that all these countries were going to hang on until the Queen passed away and then would pull out, but none of that's happened yet. So I don't know what's going to happen. Maybe they're waiting until after the coronation. Maybe they're, I don't know, but I find it very interesting. And by interesting, I mean very damaging that there are so many racially loaded accusations against this family, which again, I wish we had more time to go into. We could do like a 15-part series on this, but most of the Commonwealth countries are in the Caribbean and in Africa. So that's not good. I mean, it wouldn't be good anyway. But I just really think that I have been shocked, __ with the positive reception to Charles. I was like, oh, they're just giving him a pass because it's the mourning period. And I said, oh, they're just giving him a pass because it's his first month. But he's doing well. So we'll see what happens. But I really do think that it stands to be that the monarchy could start to crumble, which is why I have a second job security, right? Because if the monarchy crumbles, that means I'm not a royals editor anymore, right? So as we start to wrap up, Charles's coronation is coming up, and it's going to be on May 6th. 2023 at Westminster Abbey in London. I have heard Harry say that if it was at Westminster Abbey, he would not go because that is where the funeral of his mother, Diana, was. It's in a weird twist of fate. That day, May 6th, is also, if you were paying attention earlier in the presentation, is also the 4th birthday of Archie, his son. So we'll see if Harry and Meghan go. We'll see if they're invited. I think they're going to be invited even after the docuseries in the book, but we'll see. That date was chosen not as a snub to the Sussexes, by the way, but that's because it's the weekend before the state opening of Parliament. Charles and Camilla, as I said, will be crowned side by side. William is in charge of planning it. For historical context, so the heir to the throne generally plans the coronation. But Charles, as I said before, was 3 years old when his mother was crowned. And so Philip planned the Queen's coronation, or he was 4. So the Queen had 16 months before when she was crowned and when the coronation happened. So by this time, Charles was 4. Anyway, he was too young to plan a coronation. So as opposed to his mother, so Charles has said he wants it shorter, sooner, smaller. So as opposed to his mother's 3-hour ceremony. Can you imagine? Charles's is only going to be about an hour. It's going to cut some opulence, be less expensive, much more inclusive. As I just said, the Queen waited 16 months between her ascension date in February of 1952 to her coronation in June of 1953. Charles took the throne in September, and his coronation is in May. So it's a little under 8 months after he took the throne. As opposed to the Queen's 8,000 guests. Like, I don't even know 8,000. I don't even know 2,000 people probably. Charles's is only going to have about 2,000, which is 25%. See, I can do math, of his mother's guest list. And we haven't done this in 70 years. So it's been a really long time since a coronation has happened. So it won't be, if you are probably under the age of 60, it won't be the last one you'll see in your lifetime probably, but it's certainly the first one in many of our lifetimes. This is the crown he's chosen. It's the St. Edward's crown. This news just broke last week. So it's been taken out of the Tower of London. If any of you have visited there, you've probably seen this crown on display in the Tower of London, and it has been taken out. And I don't know what they're going to do with this thing for 5 months. Clean it 5,000 times, but it's already off the Tower of London, and so this is what he will wear. When I do not see a ping pong ball there anywhere. Okay, so really wrapping up 2023, what's going to happen within the next year? So Charles and Camilla, after the coronation, are going on a world tour. It is reported to be the largest tour ever planned. Charles said, I want it to be bigger than it's ever been. So then it's going to slow down, right? Because it's right. Because I feel like we've been gangbusters since 2019 when I started this work. The question gets asked to me all the time, will Harry and Meghan ever return as working members of the royal family? Doubt it. I heard that Charles was considering Harry and Meghan's proposal to be part-time royals, which they brought before the Queen, and she turned them down. I don't think that there's really going to be any going back after this docuseries and this book. Andrew is definitely never coming back. Charles, I actually wrote a story about this maybe a month or two ago. Charles sat him down and told him that he was never coming back, and Andrew cried. So that ship has sailed. We don't have time to go into most of this. Charles is one of the most hardworking. His work ethic is unparalleled. He is going to be more than just a transitional monarch. I think a lot of people have said, oh, he's just the bridge between the Queen and William. But I actually think that he will work to make some really significant changes. I mean, as Prince of Wales, he did a lot of really good work. I know that all that ends up in the press is about he and Camilla and, just all of the controversies, all of the tabloid fodder. But truly, and Charles is not a perfect man, and I am not a Charles apologist. In fact, I'm really not a huge Charles fan, and I'm definitely not a Camilla fan. But he has done some seriously good work for the environment. He has done just a lot of. He's a workhorse, and he's not a perfect man, as we have said, but he is committed to this work. He is committed to this role, and he has a real inferiority complex, which I hate for him. But anybody who has an inferiority complex knows that to overcome that, he will work harder than maybe anybody. I mean, the Queen worked very hard, but he's going to do his best to be remembered in history as someone that is more than just a transitional monarch. He's 74 years old. So if he's lucky, he maybe has 20 years on the throne. And I do think that he is going to make the most of them. So this presentation, for so many reasons, my rampant coughing, which by the grace of God stopped, me getting kicked offline, it didn't go like I planned, but life never does. So I know it's 8:17. I'm here as long as you want me. If you have any questions, I would be honored to take them.
Yeah, we have questions, and if you do have questions, drop them in the chat. We won't go too much longer, just to make sure people can have the rest of their evening, and especially you, Rachel. And thanks for bearing down and getting those coughs out of the way early. I'm surprised you didn't have another fit, so that's awesome.
Yes, by the grace of God.
I'll start off with a question, and you kind of alluded to it. You brought it up, and it's about the relevancy of the crown. In your opinion, is it still relevant? And if it is, will it be 10, 15 years down the road?
The crown, meaning the monarchy or the Netflix?
The monarchy, correct.
I do think that the monarchy has value. I really do. It's a head of state position. That oh gosh, my words, not unpolitical. That sounds, they're not political. They don't take sides. They do have a really ceremonial role in British culture, though. I do think that the monarchy will survive Charles. Again, I think everybody, to be honest with you, and I'll put myself in this pool, I think people are really waiting for William and Catherine. But, I think we've got someone who really knows what he's doing, obviously. I think we've got somebody who is committed to the work. I think that the monarchy will survive in the UK? I do. Do I think that it will survive across the sovereign states? I don't know. I mean, if you'd asked me a year ago, I would have said absolutely not. When the Queen dies, they're all pulling out. But that hasn't happened yet. And I don't know what they're waiting on. If they're waiting on the coronation. The second part of your question was, do I think that the monarchy will be around in 15 years' time? Is that what I heard you say? Yeah, I do.
Or even okay.
I do. I think it will have to be scaled back. I think that we'll see that with the coronation. They're not going to allow for the opulence of days of yore, but I do think that it will stick around.
In your opinion, do you think the titles of Harry and Meghan will be taken from them by King Charles? And you talked a little bit about waiting to see what the book and what the docuseries has, but do you think they'll still have the titles?
Well, that's sticky because you can't ever take the prince title away from Harry. That's a birthright. But the Duke and Duchess of Sussex title, actually, so I've done some research on this, and I don't think that Charles can take that away from them. I think Parliament has to take that away from them. I don't know. I don't think so. I think that I think what is in the mix right now is I'm not sure that anything will be taken away. I think the real question is what will or won't be added. And so again, back to the Archie and Lily situation, I think that if anything, the quote unquote punishment will be that the kids will not get titles. Because they should have, as I said, they should have gotten them already. It should have been automatic on September 8th, but that has not happened. And I think that says everything.
How much of the crown is based on reality and how much is entertainment?
Well, and please feel free to check out my work, rachelbirchfield.com. I write about this all the time. The crown is very much rooted in fact. Andrew Morton was a consultant on the crown for season 5. And he said that The Crown was the Netflix show was so fastidious about getting it right that they even asked him and then did it, the paper that he typed on, his typewriter, the exact paper. So they're very much in the details. However, it's still a Hollywood enterprise. And so let's just, and I'll be brief about this, but let's take episode 1 of season 5, for example. So I wrote a story about this because I could not believe it when they had the headline in 1991, allegedly, that the British public was ready for Charles to be king. I was like, yeah, right. There's no way that is true. Well, so here's an example. So it wasn't the Sunday Times, like they said, did it. It was a polling agency called Mori, and that poll said that nearly half of the British public were ready for Charles to become king in due course. Well, the way that the show makes it seem is that they're ready for him to become king now, like immediately, 1991. So I think that it is based in fact, but there's a little bit of Hollywood and dramatic twisting that makes it a little bit more dramatic. So we have had on the show the Crown's historical consultant, who is Robert Lacey. He's a brilliant man, and there's also a podcast that you should all listen to if you watch The Crown. It's called The Crown. It's the companion podcast. And you can see, or you can hear rather, from listening to that show, how much attention to detail they put into it. But they got to make it a little sexier for TV, right? So I think if I had to put percentages on it, it's probably about 85 to 90% based in truth, with that extra 15% and there's some continuity issues, like things happening out of order, but for the most part it really is pretty true to life with a bit of dramatic licensing.
So if a state pulls out of the Commonwealth, are there ramifications? Do they lose money? Is there anything that they would benefit by being part of the Commonwealth?
Well, we can look at Barbados when they pulled out in November of 2021. I found this very weird. I consider that a breakup, right? And Charles flew down to Barbados for the ceremony of Barbados becoming a republic, and he gave the remarks at it, which felt very strange to me. It's like someone saying, thank you so much, sending a thank you letter. Thank you so much for breaking up with me. Very, very strange. I think that if countries pull out of the Commonwealth, I don't think countries are going to so much pull out of the Commonwealth as they will as sovereign states. And so I think that lessens the Crown's impact globally. It's definitely something that the Queen did not want to see happen. She lost, I can't even say the name of this country, Mauritius, Mauritis, I think, in 1992, and was very upset about that. And so it didn't happen again until 2021. And so she very much wanted to keep the sovereign states together, I think, because that is something that her father wanted her to do. And so, I mean, the less subjects you have, the less legitimacy you have, the less global impact you have. And so it's definitely not something that they want. But I think when the real trouble will begin is when the UK starts to have because they've been talking about this for years. Like I just said, 1991, they're doing polls about the relevancy of the monarchy. It's always been on the tip of the tongue, but no one has ever seriously, in Parliament or otherwise, said we really should think about abolishing this. And that's when I think the real trouble would start, is when those fires start to burn inside the UK.
Now, obviously, this monarchy is the one that everybody seemingly thinks about. Are there other monarchies around the world that operate similarly?
So that's a great question, Greg. And that is what sets I'm not trying to sell you on my show. Listen to it or don't. Wish you would. But that's what sets our show apart from all of the other royal podcasts, is that we have a section every week in the show, or we do shows every other week now because we both have full-time jobs, that is called Royals Around the World. We are equally as interested, maybe not equally, but we are definitely interested in other royal families around the world. I love the Monaco royal family. I love the Swedish royal family. If anybody out there thinks that William and Harry are handsome, please go immediately Google Prince Carl Philip of Sweden, and he blows them out of the water. That's the Swedish royal family. It's beautiful. By the way, there's a lot of American infiltration. America is getting infiltrated by European royals. Obviously, we have Harry. One of Carl Philip's sisters, Madeline, lives in Florida. We have a Norwegian princess, Martha Louise, who fell in love with a healer in California. And so now she's quit the family, kind of like Harry did, and is moving to California to marry him. I just read that, oh my gosh, what Netherlands, I think, one of their sons is moving to America. So I mean, yes, I think that royal families around the world. I love the Jordanian royal family. I love the Japanese imperial family. There are so many fascinating royal families that are not just the British. British get the most press, but I mean, Belgium, Norway, Denmark. It's totally fascinating. So listen to our show, and we always talk about other royal families around the world. But other than the British, I would say Monaco and Sweden and Jordan are my top three.
Gotcha. Two more questions and we'll let you go. The first one being, which YouTube channels do you trust? This person listens to Lady C, Neil Sean, and others, but are they trustworthy, and who else should they trust?
You know, I don't really do a lot of YouTubing. I do like Neil Sean, though. I write about him sometimes. He's pretty explosive. If you hope these people are being honest, but I don't really watch a lot of YouTube, to be honest with you. I'm so inundated in other platforms that in YouTube, I actually met a YouTuber. Now I can't remember who she is, but I just met her in Boston, and she to show you where media is going. She is a YouTuber. She's, again, like, I didn't get invited there because I'm Rachel Birchall. I got invited there because I represent Marie Claire. This YouTuber is an entity unto herself, and I'm blanking on her name right now, but she was a part of the press pack. So that shows you where media is going, is that obviously people are in the royal family are paying attention to these YouTubers, but I wish I had a better answer for you than that. But I really am not dialed into YouTube, so I'll take your recommendations.
Last question. The book you mentioned earlier, you're not promoting it. We know that. Nope. But what was it?
It's called The King by Christopher Anderson. And look, I'm a voracious reader. If you want to know, I don't know if this is where your question's going, Greg, but if you want to know my favorite royal books, we always have all of the authors on the show on Podcast Royal. So my hidden agenda, if you will, is to get people to read more. That's like one of my goals in this life. And so we always bring on the authors of our favorite books. Greg, ask your question, because I think I just cut you off. What was your question? You were asking about the King.
No, it was just what the book title was. They were interested in that title. So you're good.
And I just had him on the show. Gareth Russell wrote this book about the Queen Mother, Queen Elizabeth's mother, the Queen Mother, who, you know, she's interesting, but I never would have thought I would have loved this book so much. And the book just came out. It's called Do Let's Have Another Drink. The Queen Mother is awesome. She struggled with her weight, hated being photographed, loved to drink alcohol, and that's me in a nutshell. So, you know, I just loved reading this book. It's so well written and absolutely great. 99 Glimpses of Princess Margaret is also a great book. Princess Margaret, we didn't even talk about her, but she's totally fascinating. There's so many books, and we've had a lot of the authors on Podcast Royal. So if you want a good, I hesitate to tell you to listen to episode 1 of Podcast Royal because we are so bad. Like, we've had 2+ years under our belt since then. But in episode 1 of Podcast Royal, we did like a big entertainment guide where we listed all of our favorite royal books, movies, TV shows. So there's some good recommendations there too.
Rachel Birchfield of Podcast Royal and part of the UAB family. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. We really had great information, and I think the audience was engaged and they enjoyed to hear what you had to say.
Well, thank you so much, Greg, first of all, for your fortuitous ask. Thank you, everyone, for coming, and I'm easy to find and would love to chat more.
Awesome. And just a reminder to tonight's guest, a recording of the webinar will be uploaded onto our website tomorrow. Be sure to come back in 2023 as our webinar series continues. On Wednesday, January 11th, we will host Setting the Tone, Effective Communication and Positive Energy in an Organization. Make-A-Wish Alabama President and CEO Tracy Bennett-Smith will take a look at how the right tone creates the right culture within your workplace. On Wednesday, February 15th, join us for Epidemic of Chronic Disease, Infinite Causes with Finite Disease Expressions. Dr. Greg Nutella will give us an overview of current thinkings for causes and how we can stay healthy. On Tuesday, February 28th, we'll welcome Zach Sims, John Hudson, and Jim Cavalli for NIL Opportunity Knocks. Be part of this panel discussion as we learn more about the NCAA's name, image, and likeness policy and how it can benefit UAB athletes and your businesses. On Thursday, March 9th, come back for preparing for your house plans for spring. Caitlin Hastings will show us how we can liven up our homes while discovering our indoor green thumbs. And on Tuesday, March 21st, we will host I Believe There is a Hero in All of Us, Superheroes and Risk-Taking Behavior in Young Children. Dr. David Schwabel and Cassie Morgan, will join us as we dive into how those idols can be linked to major health challenges. Register for these and more. We're always adding webinars, always adding events. Go to alumni.uab.edu/events. And before you go, let us know how we're doing. What were your thoughts about tonight's webinar, and what would you like to see in the future? The QR code on your screen takes you to a short survey to complete. We would love your feedback. Once again, thank you so much for joining us for tonight's webinar. And as always, go Blazers.